It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. We are truly in uncharted waters right now with what's going on in Ukraine. Horrible. Every moment worse than the next. Horrible top to bottom. And, the reality is this isn't the weekend that Putin thought it was going to be, because he thought we're going to go in, it's going to be a quick weekend, we're going to come back, parades, kissing babies, all that stuff. They'll acquiesce. Hasn't happened. And look, people are suffering all over. People are dying in Ukraine. People are suffering in Russia. This is bad all around. We now see the economy that Russia had thought they were going to be inoculated from some of the sanctions. Their debt rating down to junk status. That was quick. We're talking only a couple of days and you're in junk status already. Because nobody seems to believe that they're going to be able to service their debt. The Russian oligarchs have already lost $80 billion. And it's no wonder you got one of them putting $1 million bounty on Putin's head. This Alex Kanahaneman, $1 million. And I saw this, I'm going, who's going to collect that? Who's going to try? But hey, this is what happens when you screw with the moneyed interests. Here in the U.S., Joe Biden and the Justice Department, they're beginning to go after the oligarchs here. There's new sanctions coming down, going to prohibit the oligarchs from traveling here, targeting their families and families down the line, preventing them from transferring assets out of their name into spouses or children's names, stuffs that they've done before. This is serious. In fact, the Justice Department announced that they are creating a task force specifically designated to go after billionaire oligarchs who have sided with Vlad, and they're going to make them hurt. And this is one of those moments where you go, uh-oh. If you're Vlad, uh-oh. Yesterday we talked about how Germany seized a billionaire's little boat. Today the story, France seized the yacht of another Russian oligarch. This one, a Russian energy oligarch, Igor II. His 280-foot little bathtub boat got snatched up. And maybe they're going to sell that off. Hopefully they will. There's a lot of cleaning up to do. And the thing is Russia had, the thought was they had built this financial fortress. They were going to be okay. They had like $630 billion in central banks, that they were going to be able to. It's all frozen. Everything frozen. Because I don't think Putin thought that the world this quickly, and this is, I got to tell you, this is Joe Biden. Because Biden took the intelligence early. He took it seriously early. He got out in front of it early, and he was preparing people. If you remember, he came out and said, hey, they're going to attack, and we know they're going to attack within a week. This is what's going to happen. And he was spot on. He read I know this is tough. He read the presidential daily briefings. He read the information. I know that's something that, wow, mind-blowing. But actually pulled the world together. And look how quickly the world has come together. And here's my problem with where we are. Get ready for what's going to come. Because the whole world now is going, yeah, well, except for those 5 places we talked about yesterday. Of which, 4 of them, I knew where they were on the map. The one I'm still trying to figure out. But get ready for the reality that Putin is going to have to provoke a wider war. He needs sympathy at home. Things not going well. And look how quickly things not going well. Early reports, not good for him. Mass protests in the streets, Not good for him. You've already got an oligarch going, hey, I got $1 million for the first person to take him out. What? Quick. Now I hear people here. I have folks going, the U.S. or NATO or somebody should enforce a no-fly zone. We should get involved. No. We should do exactly what we've done. The entire world should condemn this. The entire world in unity should say, no, this is not how we do things. This is not something you're going to get a reward for, and we will not recognize this. I'm 100% opposed to the idea of enacting a no-fly zone, and here's why. Right now, Vlad not doing well. Public polling at home not so good. Even the rigged ones, what he's doing. The couple of the unnamed sources from inside the administration saying, hey, I can't resign because the only place I can resign to is jail, so they're not thrilled. So don't walk near any open windows there, Vlad. But what needs to happen for him is to see the outside world attacking Russia. He needs that because right now, the people of Russia are seeing exactly what we're seeing. The big bully, a mighty army with massive bombs and cluster bombs and rockets and all kinds of stuff, just bombing people who are literally in the basement making Molotov cocktails to stop a 40-mile procession of armored vehicles and military equipment. This is the ultimate David and Goliath. It's not even, it's not even David. It's like David with standing on one foot with both hands tied over his head, up to his eyeballs in water. That's how bad this is. And everybody's looking at it with the horror that it deserves, because there's one guy that deserves the world's scorn, and that is Vladimir Putin. And you want the Russian people to look at that and go, hey, yeah, him. He's responsible. The second you introduce NATO, the U.S. especially, or anyone else, the whole dynamic then changes. Now it's, oh, look, who's the evil Satan, or however you want to frame that. Which is why I think you had that incident the other day in Sweden, where there was a Russian, a Russian spaceship, a Russian, where there was a Russian plane that was in Sweden's airspace. I was going with plane and airspace, and it just came out almost a spaceship. But no, this is what I'm expecting. So make sure you mark that down. Also, interesting little tidbits real quick. If the goal was to make sure that no other countries go towards the EU and towards NATO, if that was the goal, we're worried about those former Russian states becoming more westernized and becoming more European and wanting to do what Ukraine now is going to really want to do. Georgia today formally announced that they are going to seek EU membership, as has Moldova. And look, they both got to be going, hey, how about that NATO thing? How about that too? Because we could use the help. And you want to make sure that everyone else falls into line with NATO there, Vlad. Keep doing what you're doing. This is exactly the reason that countries are going, maybe we do need to be in with the rest of the international community. Just my thoughts. Love to hear yours, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I want to take a quick break. I got a lot to get to today. A little bit about the State of the Union, a little bit about this. A candidate's going to come on and talk about getting rid of John Kennedy in Louisiana. So much to get to. Going to take a quick break right here, right back. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
doesn't happen like we think it does. No one rolls the tanks. No armies meet in pitched battle. It happens quietly, little by little. And because so many think it can't happen, it does happen. Little by little, the rules change. It doesn't seem shocking or sudden. And that's the point. Fewer places to vote, longer lines. Don't worry, they say. We're just improving the system. They hope we won't notice the rules are changing because they lost the last election. They hope we just won't care enough to stop them. They believe they can take America away from us, and we won't even notice. We know who they are. We know what they want. The question is, who are we? Do we let them get away with it, or do we fight? Democracy is on the ballot. Vote while your vote still counts. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the last time my next guest was on the program, we were talking about the Build Back Better plan, and at that time it was dead. Look, it was completely done. Manchin had been basically stabbed us all in the heart and said, well, "You're not getting these investments because we're gonna feed the drug habits of people, and screw those kids because they'll get used to eating and that'll be bad for them." No, he didn't actually say that, but close to it. And this is where I think the State of the Union address kind of revived a little bit the Build Back Better plan, which I think is important, which is why I've asked Nevin Nayak to come talk with us. Nevin is the president and executive director of the Center for American Progress Action Fund. If you want to check out their website, americanprogressaction.org. We'll get links out on social media. How you can check that out. Nevin, thanks for taking time for us.
My pleasure to be back.
So let's jump right into it. Thoughts on the speech?
I think overall it was a really strong moment for this president. I think, across the board on Ukraine, I think he looked, the way he needed to, which was very presidential, and really drew a strong message against Vladimir Putin, and stood, I think, firm in terms of what the U.S.'s role is going to be on this. And then, I think the core of the speech in terms of domestic issues really was around the economy, both touting the successes of the last year, which have gotten way too little attention. And I think he tried to give that the sort of opportunity to lift it up. And then talking about how much more there is to do. And I think what was compelling in terms of Build Back Better specifically, and we're probably not going to call it that anymore officially, but he had a chance to reframe it really in the context of what the bill does in this moment, which is lowering costs for families. And I thought it was one of his best lines of the night, in fact, where he acknowledged inflation is a problem and said there's one solution is to lower people's wages. And, he basically came up with a better solution, which is to cut your costs, keep raising your wages and cut your costs. And so I thought that was an important thing. And I thought he really laid out the need for these provisions in Build Back Better without ever having to say those words.
Right. No, I think what he did is what I've been saying they should have been doing for the last year, is explaining exactly what it's going to do to make people's lives better. Lose the catch name, lose the numbers, say, hey, how are we going to make your life better? How are we going to make things easier? How are we going to make sure that you get childcare so that you don't go broke? How can we make sure that, we get help if you need to take care of a loved one? How can we make sure that there's an infrastructure in place to make lives better, to get work done? And look, that's what I loved about the speech. He came in, he was positive. He delivered the goods, and he was on point.
Yeah, and I actually thought another really powerful moment was with that young boy in the audience, and reminding the American people that they can do something, that Congress, and really unfortunately it's just Democrats, can do something to lower the cost of something like insulin. I mean, that was a great moment where you remind the American people that insulin costs pharmaceutical drug companies $10 to make. But families are paying $300 or more a month. And we should just cap the cost of insulin, which is what President Biden's proposing to do at $35 a month. That's still a very healthy profit for the drug companies, huge margin. And what a savings for millions of families, whose lives depend on getting insulin. Yeah, I thought there were a lot of moments like that where he made it really tangible, and to your point, showed the American people how the policies he was proposing would really improve their lives.
And for me, again, I come back to that. And this is what I liked about the speech. It wasn't full of grievances. It wasn't full of, people are mean to me stuff. It was just going to get the work done. Show up, do the job. Wasn't fancy, wasn't flashy. Granted, I've said this a bunch of times. People are probably tired of hearing it. He's not Barack Obama. He's not Bill Clinton. He's Uncle Joe. He's going to go out there. He's going to make some gaffes. He's going to make some mistakes. He's going to trip over himself. But at the end of the day, it's the policy that I'm most interested in and the direction he wants to take us.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I think really goes to this Uncle Joe sort of persona and demeanor, which is he's got a lot of heart, right? Like, I think that really came across in the speech, not only when he was talking about his son, but when he was, the workers he lifted up, the stories he was telling, whether it was on prescription drugs or even around the war. This is a president who cares deeply and, is in this position for all the right reasons, because he actually wants to, position America better for the future and help working people actually have a shot to get ahead. And I think you're 100% right. He's not going to be remembered for sort of grand oratory or, these flowery turns of phrases. He's just going to be this president who really has cared about working people and is looking to give them a leg up.
No, it's one of those things that I've always said about him. He's just a guy who's going to get up every day, going to do the job and get the job done. And look, in this moment, especially with what's going on in Ukraine, calm, steady, focused leadership is what we need. Not loudmouth, bombastic morons pounding on the table. Good, solid, steady focus. I think that's the direction we go. Now, going forward here, because it's going to be a sales job, because, of course, you got Joe Manchin, minutes after the speech, basically throwing cold water on reviving the Build Back Better, or whatever we're going to rename this. Thoughts?
Well, I think initially he was not so positive. He gave I thought a really encouraging interview yesterday afternoon to Politico, where again, there's no reason for him to do this. As you mentioned, the press corps basically believes the bill is dead. The conversation is all but stopped publicly for the last month. And yet he went to, sat down with a reporter and said, here are 4 things I can do. I can, cap prescription drug prices and let Medicare finally negotiate. I can, get corporate tax reform. It's time to actually ask corporations and the wealthy to start paying their fair share. We can take those savings and invest it in a clean energy future and tackling the climate crisis. And then, the thing he cares about, obviously, on top of that is putting money into deficit reduction. That's not obviously our top priority. There's a lot of other things we would really be interested in focusing on. But that to me is, again, if you had told me a year ago when Democrats barely had taken over a 50-50 Senate, that in addition to everything that has been done, $1 trillion infrastructure bill, the American Rescue Plan that got this country vaccinated and cut child poverty in half, and on top of that, we might take on the pharmaceutical industry, we might make the largest investment ever in clean energy, and ask corporations and the wealthy to pay their fair share. I mean, that's a really powerful agenda. It's, again, short of everything this country needs and that working people want, but it opened the door to some really meaningful policy opportunities. And I think, I think the next month and a half is really the window in which we got to find out how serious he is and whether we can actually deliver that kind of change in people's lives, which would be huge.
No, we need to jump on this and quickly. And somebody should have grabbed him right then, grabbed him by the ear and taken him over to the Senate and gotten it passed through. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're with Nevin Nayak. He's the president and executive director of the Center for American Progress Action Fund. AmericanProgressAction.org, their website. You want to take a look at the work that they do. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast so you never miss a moment of the program. You can do that at thericksmithshow.com or anywhere where you get your podcast. Now, here's the thing, and I'm glad, Manchin finally a little bit on a couple of things, and this is where, the art of the possible. We need to get what we can get, and that has to happen soon, and then you work for the next bit of stuff. But what do you say to the people, Nevin, who are going to go, well, we didn't get everything we wanted, and you're going to have people who are kicking and screaming because, the day after the State of the Union speech, every group that didn't get mentioned, wow, the collective whine that was there.
I mean, I think that is hard because, there are a lot of problems facing this country, right? And I don't think it's to deny that. I think this president came in and laid out the challenges, not only on democracy, on racial justice, on climate change, and on the economy. He laid out some pretty serious crises facing this country. And I think, one, people have to remember there's only one party that's actually, A, acknowledges most of these problems, but B, is actually fighting to get some of these things done. And the only way, so that's the first thing. The second thing is we got to go and talk about what has been done. And I think not enough has been talked about the fact that, more jobs are created under this president in 1 year than any president, fastest economic growth in 40 years, some really big successes that are really important to talk to, wage growth. And so if we can get this done, I think it'll be a reminder that if you want to keep going, there's only one option, which is we need more Democrats. No. If we weren't stuck in a 50-50 Senate, you actually would have seen more of these things done. We would have gotten childcare done. We would have gotten home care done. We would have gotten the child tax credit extended. All these things, there's only one path forward, which is we need more Democrats in the Senate. There's not a single Republican that's willing to do any of these things right now. They've gotten so extreme and radical on their side of the party that, again, the majority of Republicans in the House and the Senate opposed a common sense infrastructure bill. I mean, they can't even vote for roads and bridges.
Isn't that incredible?
Communities. So, obviously we are a little disappointed not more is getting done, but a lot has gotten done. And there's only one path forward to keep this going. So we got to keep reminding people of that.
Yeah, and to your point, on the other, we need more Democrats and insane Democrats who want to get things done. In the other half of the hour, we're going to have Luke Mixon on the program to talk about getting John Kennedy out in Louisiana, because we need to get rid of some of this dead weight in states that are winnable. Because look, Louisiana is a state that needs investment, and climate change, kind of a big deal in that state, I would think.
Yeah, and then there's so many. Same thing in Florida. Look at that. That's a state similarly where you have these huge problems. Climate's a great example, barreling down on these states. And not only do they not want to do anything, they're actively trying to make things worse. That's the thing that's become really, the Republican Party really has changed in the last 5 years. They've always been the party of big business and of corporations, but they've really become the extreme MAGA party right now, where the only thing that matters to them is actually getting power. And they're not interested in getting power to help working people. But their goal is to actually get power to reward their friends and punish their enemies. And that's sort of, what does Kevin McCarthy put out as an agenda? Not a single thing other than he's going to strip a bunch of Democrats he doesn't like of their chairmanship. That is the agenda they have offered. And then even more frightening, because it's concrete and scary, last week, Rick Scott, the head of the Republican Senate Committee, put out his plan, which would end Social Security in 5 years. It would raise taxes on 75 million households, including, nearly 2/3 of seniors in the country, right? Like, they really do have a radical agenda. And if you're not with them, they're just looking to get power. They'll do anything to get power, and they're going to use it to punish people.
No, you're absolutely right. And the important part there, punish people, because these folks are just plain mean. I don't know where else to come up with it. But Nevin, I appreciate you taking some time for us, sharing some thoughts. Hope you'll come back and talk with us again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Nevin Nayak. He is the president and the executive director there at the Center for American Progress Action Fund, AmericanProgressAction.org. Check that out. Good stuff there. Also, if you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast there at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
I took 2 years of electric in high school, and I was the only girl in the class there. Here, I'm the only girl as far as installers go. I'm a single mom, too. I joined the union because it gave me options for health care and life insurance so that I know my son's taken care of. I like what I do. This is the best job I've ever had. You think solar panels is more like California. You wouldn't think Appalachia would have any. It would be smart if the government would invest more in clean energy resources.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. And the Teamsters pushed a lot so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind. The union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case, and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
The best way to strengthen America's economy? How about investing in America's fastest growing industry, clean energy? We're talking jobs, millions of them, the type that pay well and can't be outsourced. Because the thing about clean energy, it's all right here, American made. It means lower utility costs for families, and it's how we take on climate change. An investment in clean energy is a big win. Congress, let's get it done.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I gotta tell you, I'm still hung up on this Maria Bartiromo's question, and Trump's going on about China. I'm still struggling with this because she asked him, and as I said before, she asked, "Do you expect China to invade Taiwan sooner rather than later?" Like this, in her view, it's a foregone conclusion, gonna happen. And his response is, "I do, because they're seeing how stupid the United States is run." You know, really, in a moment where the world is at conflict, this is what the former guy comes out with. Just insane. But hey, look, this is the guy who said Putin was smart and genius and savvy and very savvy. Crazy. Here to share some thoughts on where we are and just how nuts all this is, I've asked our good friend Fred Wellman to come talk with us. Fred's the co-founder of the Beer Hall Project. Fred, thanks for taking time for us.
Good to be back, Rick. It's great to see you.
So I'm looking at this and I'm going, I don't know what happened to Maria Bartiromo. I remember her as a business reporter who was always very good, very factual, very on point. Now she seems as loony as that Janine Pirro.
Yeah, it's that whole, there's a whole arc to it now, right? Where some level-headed people turn into fire-breathing converts to the Trumpist ways. It's been, and you see it in the media, you see it in these talking heads, and of course you see it in politicians. Like here in Missouri, we have Eric Schmidt, who by every measure was a normal, easy to work with bipartisan Republican, and now is down at CPAC, suing school districts here in Missouri. And there's a weird conversion that goes into being dedicated to the cult, and you got to be all in. Otherwise, you're not fully a member of the cult. You're all in like she's gone.
No, it's that loyalty thing, and you go back to, some of the crazier times. And I liked one of your Beer Hall Project tweets today about Hitler. You wrote, "Hitler absolutely adored Mussolini. It was so over the top, you said it actually made him uncomfortable, and he avoided Hitler for years because it was weird. History has a way of repeating itself." Are you saying that our former president has a thing for Putin? Is that where you're going up with this?
I think he's a super fan, man. It's just weird. Just the way he talks about the guy. There's the folks at the Republican Accountability Project put out a great ad today, talking, really showing all the ways that Trump speaks about Putin, and he's savvy, he's so smart. He waits out the Olympics. It's brilliant. It's just, I don't know, man. It makes me uncomfortable sometimes. But either way, it's just completely inappropriate for someone who is the president of the United States to be so adoring of a dictator from Russia who is currently conducting an illegal war where he's slaughtering civilians and causing danger to the entire world. it's mind-boggling. But yeah, that's a historic fact. I mean, Hitler was a huge Mussolini fan. He modeled his brown shirt essay. The brown shirts was a takeoff on the black shirts of Mussolini. The beer hall putsch was a model of Mussolini's march to Rome. The old goal was to take over Bavarian's government and then walk to Berlin at the head of his column of brown shirts. And of course, it didn't work out so well for him. But it's true. Mussolini kind of kept him at arm's length. Ruth Ben Ghiat in her book Strong Men talks about it extensively. The very first part of her book about the strange alignment of these fascist movements in the early in the 30s and the 20s.
Yeah, but the thing that gets me is, and this is where I'm struggling, because you said a moment ago, the guy in Missouri was at one point sane and rational, made this bizarre, this bizarre shift. I just talked with a guy who's running for Senate in Louisiana. He was talking about John Kennedy, who at one point was a solid Democrat, and then a little bit more moderate Democrat, then turned to a Republican, then and now full flipping lunatic. I guess we better figure out what's in the water.
It's naked ambition. I thought it was a lot of it. Let's be honest. I think what's happened is you could be pretty ambitious politicians back in the day and not have to be a lunatic. But with today's Republican Party and the loyalty of Trump, you have no choice. You have to prove that you're over the top loyal to the king. And again, this is the model for every authoritarian history, right? From mafia bosses to fascist. And so you have to be who's loyal, who's more loyal. And it's fascinating. You're seeing it play out in all these GOP primaries across the country, where they're just eating each other alive to see who can be more crazy. I don't know if you saw it yesterday in Texas, where the congressman's resigning after winning, well, coming out on top of his race, because the third place finisher outed him for having an affair. They're tearing each other apart in the goal to prove who's the most loyal and who's the most Trumpy. I mean, for me as a Democratic political consultant, it's high entertainment, but for our country, it's terrifying. Today, John Jr. once again tweeted a negative hit about our woke military. It's like, my God, our military right now is deploying to Europe to backstop our NATO allies. Russia has invaded Ukraine. They're killing people. By the way, they're doing a terrible job. They're being slaughtered. They've lost hundreds, if not thousands, of soldiers, and we still have Americans, people in power, people formerly in power, essentially cheering for the Russians. It's disturbing. It's just terrifying, actually.
And you've got media figures here. I mean, I look at the Fox channel. Yeah, in fact, I don't even really know where Tucker Carlson is at this moment. There was a pivot at one point where at the beginning, everyone was, yay, Putin. And now that you're seeing these atrocities and the world is coming together against this. Now they're going, this might be bad for us. We should probably figure out how to not be so pro-Putin.
Well, I mean, what they're trying to do is be anti-Putin and anti-Biden, right? And it's disturbing. There was a time when we rallied around the flag, where we support the president, the commander-in-chief. They want it both ways. They want to hate on Biden, but still hate on Putin. And it's an impossible needle to thread. I mean, if there ever does come the most dire situation where we do find ourselves in direct confrontation, they're really going to be in trouble. What do? Do you support the U.S. military against Putin or not? And that test is coming. I mean, I call a lot of these guys traitors a lot. I get accused of it a lot, but I'm very comfortable with that word at this point. If you are openly attacking the president of the United States while he's coordinating a huge international coalition, doing by every measure a brilliant job in a very tough circumstance, bringing folks together, bringing people who, I mean, my God, Germany's upping their budget. Trump beating those guys for years. They didn't up their budget. All it took was Joe Biden and the Russians to get that going. So just have some common sense, but there isn't. The entire party's lost their common sense. Now it's more important to own the libs. It's more important to hate on the commander in chief. I mean, just tonight, Carlson was on there talking about, I was wrong. I was wrong. Putin's really bad. But, I think one of the reasons we were wrong is because Biden and Harris did such a terrible job leading us. Like, it's just, it's comical. I mean, it is comical, but it's freaking mind-boggling that you could have such a broken brain where you blame the president of the United States, who's coordinating an international coalition, for you not understanding just how evil a murderous dictator was, who's invaded several countries before this and has been ruthlessly killing people for years, throwing them out of windows. So, it's exhausting. I feel, somebody asked me the other day how I feel right now. I got to tell you, I'm just freaking exhausted. I'm tired of having to say the same thing over and over. These people have given up their loyalty to the United States in the name of power,
Yep.
in the name of corruption. And I think that the day will come when we will find out just why these people are so compromised.
And the reality is, we brought this up earlier. The fact is Republicans don't have an agenda. They have no policy aims. They have no direction. They
Correct.
want pure, unadulterated power, like you said. And the reason they want that is, well, yeah, they want to enrich their friends and themselves, and they want all that, but they want to punish the others. They want to punish people. Look, I get the idea.
Right.
We want power because we're going to make things better. We're gonna go in this direction. But their idea is we're gonna push back, and we're gonna go after whatever. Name the other group. That's what they're after.
Well, there's no interest in actually bringing America up. There's no interest in bringing America forward. It is truly about peeling off people. I don't know if you saw the picture today of the governor of Iowa signing the bill banning transgender individuals from performing in women's sports in the state. But what was shocking about it was the picture was nothing but young white women. Yeah, like literally blonde. Somebody joked on my Twitter that the diversity in the entire picture was one girl had curly hair. And this is what they're doing. It's hard not to see with your own two eyes. Something we say often at Beer Hall Project is it's right there for you to see. Your own two eyes see what's happening. Stop denying what you see. When you see the governor of a state signing bills surrounded by nothing but white citizens, that's a sign. And when you see activities like these transgender activity, the anti-transgender work in Texas, it's right there. It's hatred. It's bigotry. We don't stand for anything but hating people. And that's a terrifying place to be in the United States. And we have an entire party, I believe, that's dedicated itself to doing nothing more than tearing down others for their own gain. And it's right there. I mean, literally, there was no RNC platform. Remember, the RNC platform was whatever Donald Trump wants.
Yep.
And now there is no Donald Trump. They're just nothing but anger and hatred. I'm just tired of this. I was really angry on Monday, but now I've crossed to tired.
Join the club, and this is how it's been for the last several years. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Fred Wellman. Fred's the co-founder of the Beer Hall Project. You can follow him on Twitter at Beer Hall Project. Also, the website beerhallproject.com.
Beerhallproject.com. Of course, my own Twitter is FP Wellman.
And we'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. Now, here's one of the things that I'm looking at this moment, going, all of the news reports coming out of Ukraine are just heartbreaking and angering, and yet you've got the Fox folks, you've got the OANs, you've got all of this money that went into these places. Today, the news story that RT shut down operations here in the U.S., off in the UK. Are we at a moment, do you think, that finally we're going to begin to investigate how much Russian money went into media communications in this country? Go back to 2014, 15, and all during then, how much went into Fox News? How much went into all of these cable channels? Because look, I went to the conventions back in 16. I saw the outlets there and the kind of wealth that was in all of these outlets that you got like 6 followers on Twitter. How is it possible you got 50 grand worth of equipment and you're doing this for a living? Yeah. Where's this money coming from? And I don't know if you we're now finding out more and more where it was coming from.
Well, exactly. And a lot of malfeasant actors. I don't know if you saw today, Steve Bannon's partner, the Mr. Guo, I believe is his name. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, but the Chinese gentleman who's been backing all of Steve Bannon's ventures, he's bankrupt now, unfortunately, because he's also a crook. He shut down his GTV outlet, which was a big part of Bannon's master plan, which is where they broadcast in Chinese. So a lot of these guys have been backed by some very rotten people. And yeah, we're starting to see it. I saw something fascinating too, where I don't know if you've noticed it, but the quality of my trolls is really going down. I mean, and somebody pointed out today that Dr. Oz, for example, has allegedly like 4 million followers on Twitter, but he'll put a tweet out and only get like 10 retweets in hours. Okay, that's interesting, because if you have that many followers, the pure algorithm will jam, a lot of engagement. So what was the engagement? Well, the engagement was bot farms. They have these bot farms overseas, and I wonder how many of those are based in Russia, because we're not seeing the activity anymore. But I do think we're at a moment, and I think in the larger moment, not just media, but in politics. I had a conversation with my friends, on the Midas Touch podcast the other day about. I feel like we're at a moment. I still feel the same way 4 days later that it's like an earthquake right now. there's a faults work. So I live in Missouri now, and the New Madrid Fault is south of St. Louis. It's quite famous. There was a huge earthquake in the 1800s that actually shifted the direction of the Mississippi River. If you look at the map of Missouri, the border between Missouri and Illinois and Tennessee actually doesn't follow the Mississippi River anymore because the river shifted from this earthquake. And if you know how faults work, a fault, the way it works is it builds up pressure, and then it slips, and that's an earthquake. And I think it feels like in a lot of ways we may be in a moment in the middle of that slip, that the invasion of Ukraine and its ties and it exposes that larger authoritarian movement. And actually, I do compare it often to the 20s and 30s with the movement of fascism, the global fascism movement, which had parties here in the United States. They had parties in France. They didn't take power, which like they did in Germany and Italy and others, but there was a global fascist movement. I think we've seen a global authoritarian movement in the last few years, in the last 4 or 5 years, and this is that moment where that for maybe I don't like to do historical comparisons, but the Sudetenland, the siege of the Sudetenland was the first move by Hitler. I think we're seeing the same kind of a movement now. Putin has made his move to take Ukraine. It's not going great, but it has exposed this global movement of who stands with who. And suddenly all these organizations and people that were able to kind of have it both ways, like you said, Fox News specifically, Tucker Carlson, Trump, had to pick a side, and they're having a hell of a time, right? I think what you're seeing is, the earthquake is shaking things up. RT going away is is very important. It'll be very interesting to see what the effects are on organizations like Fox News and others, and let's be honest, the GOP, who have really had tied themselves at the hip to these overseas authoritarians. Don't you remember freaking Tucker Carlson was supposed to broadcast in Hungary, having CPAC in Hungary, for goodness sake, in Viktor Orban's country. So that's a global authoritarian movement. So it is, I think we're faced in a moment much like, say, 1939, perhaps, where the first move has been made outwardly and the die has been cast, and how we react to it as a nation, how our leaders react, and how the entire global the coalition, if you will, reacts this moment will be telling. I'm cautiously optimistic, which is not a feeling I use very often anymore, but I am cautiously optimistic by seeing the way that Europe has stepped up to the plate and the way the whole world has stepped up to the plate to choke off Russia from the international scene and react to this. But I don't know. I think it's encouraging to see that we're taking it seriously. I do believe that Putin has truly overstepped he's as they say a lot, he's over the tip of his skis a little bit. But these next few weeks are going to be really interesting to see what happens. And historically, I think we're living in historic times.
Oh, absolutely. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Fred Wellman, co-founder of the Beer Hall Project, beerhallproject.com, the website if you want to check that out. You got a thought, question, comment for Fred? Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. The reason I bring this up is, there was a story today that one of the ex-Fox News producers, this guy, Jack Hannock, was there at Fox News, evidently has been charged with working for a sanctioned Russian oligarch to establish television networks in Russia and in other European countries. And you go, they understand messaging. They understand it really well, especially propaganda. And I'm sure they got their ties right here, and I hope some of that comes out in this as well.
I hope so too. That's my hope. I think I said early on, I'll say it again, is after the fall of the Soviet Union, we finally had access to the archives. After East Germany fell, and we actually got into Stasi's headquarters and saw the files. We found some interesting things out, right? And I can't help but wonder what lurks in Putin's files and archives, who's been paid and who hasn't, and what the information they have on people is, because it's clear that there are very compromised people working in our space. Yeah. I can't wait to see the truth on Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, I hate to think that Tulsi's whole story, she's just ambitious beyond measure, that she actually believes the bullshit she's selling. Oh, sorry, I did it.
You did it.
It beat me.
There's a quarter for the jar. But here's the thing.
About that,
I'm looking at this moment. I was looking at some of the stories today that I started the show off with. The fact that oligarchs in Russia have lost $80 billion. Their bathtub boats are being all confiscated up. Yesterday, one in Germany. Today, one in France. Not good for business. Their credit rating down to junk status. You got another Russian oligarch who's put $1 million bounty on Putin's head. At some point, the wealthy in that country have got to go, hey, you're killing us. You got to go. Right. And this is where...
Or even the averages. the average Russians. I mean, a ticket to St. Petersburg from St. Petersburg to Helsinki today was $7,500 in the train. Think about that number.
Wow.
So $7,500 to take a train from St. Petersburg to Helsinki to get out of Russia before what they think is going to be martial law. So there's a lot of pain in Russia today, and you have to wonder what will be the price for that. How long can you hold out? I don't know. I don't know.
Russia
I'm not
is
an
a
expert in
capitalist
Russia.
country. Good American gouging. Look at that.
There you go. Right.
But you said a moment ago that you were guardedly optimistic, and how do you think this administration is handled thus far what's going on in Ukraine? Clearly, there was no way this was going to be stopped. And for those who keep saying, well, Joe Biden should have been tough enough, I think that's, to use a Biden word, malarkey. But I'd like to get your thought.
I'm not if you know me, I'm not a giant cheerleader. I mean, I always was uncomfortable the way people would cheerleader for Trump, but and I've been very hard on Mr. Biden in the past. I knew him when he was Senator Biden. I was in Iraq in 2005. He came over and we butted heads a little bit when we briefed him at my command, because he was still talking about the idea of splitting Iraq into three pieces at that point, fully 4 years after it became a sovereign nation. So obviously that wasn't an option, or 3 years. So I've not always agreed with Mr. Biden on his foreign policy views. But if you have a moment in time where you need someone with a unique skill set like Mr. Biden at this moment, you couldn't have picked a moment. Look here he's a senator for his whole life. He's an old school senator, and old school senators are all about coalition building, partnerships, going across the aisle, finding ways to work together quietly. There was never like a big, if you remember the old days, it wasn't one senator, it was always the Skyline Ranger, like Ted Cruz, like that. It was always, they worked together in collaboration. It was the world's greatest collaborative body, right, at one point, right? And that's what Mr. Biden grew up with. And he's not a big talker. He's more of a pick up the phone and talk. He's got a warmth about him when he talks to people. I've seen it. And that's this moment. We needed someone who could step up, build a coalition, work with allies, not Bigfoot them, not claim all the credit, put the power of the United States to action. And I give him high marks. I mean, honestly, there's just very few things I haven't seen them. There's very few things I've said, we should do this, and within a day or so it's happened, right? And so I give him high marks, and some might be. I'm not an expert on the worst in Eastern Europe. I have friends that are. I'm seeing is as much as we can do, we're doing. We're moving troops into position. We're stepping hard on what we can do. We're sending weapons. I mean, short of direct combat, we're doing everything possible. And I got to tell you, it's good to see, because for 20 years, the global war on terror, everything we used was hammers. The only tool we had in our toolbox was hammers. It was just a matter of what size hammer. Is it a drone? Is it an entire freaking army invading? So it, to me, as an old school, I took international relations back in my undergraduate degree at West Point. It's good to see the full spectrum of what we call DIME, or diplomacy and economic sanctions, all being used in concert, as you should in international crisis. So I give them high marks. Obviously the jury's still out, and the enemy gets a vote, but I do believe in my heart that they're seeing a tough time now. And then you couple that with a charismatic leader who's using modern communications very effectively, Mr. Zelensky, and you got quite the team, right? You got on each side of the equation. Mr. Zelensky's holding people's feet to the fire, but he's being very adept in his ability to communicate what he needs and support that he's getting. And you got Biden quietly organizing, a massive coalition. So I'm satisfied. I don't say that very often, but I think we're doing what we can do.
Yeah. Last question I got on this, because everyone wants to know when this ends. How does this end? Does this end with Putin flying out a window? Does someone take the $1 million and try and knock him off? Or do we just have no clue on how far Putin is willing to go? I mean, there have been overtures of we're going to be using nuclear weapons at some point. The thing with in Sweden the other day, where it seems like they're trying to cause some conflict elsewhere, so that they can start a broader war. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I wish I could give an answer. The thing about being a combat veteran is, I did 4 combat tours. 2 significantly, I did the Desert Storm invasion, and I also did Iraq 1. I was the OAF 1 invasion. So I've had the ignominious history of invading other countries, the same country twice. And I can honestly say that even going in with the world's greatest military at the time, I still didn't know how it was going to go, right? You just don't know. Yeah. None of us predicted how well the Ukrainians would stand up to this fight, how well they would stay organized. The fact they still don't have air superiority, so they're still putting up a fight. The information war has been stunning to watch unfold. completely unexpected in so many ways.
No.
So I don't have a lot of predictions. I do believe that Mr. Putin has greatly overestimated his ability to win this war. I don't think he's going to win it. I don't think there's any chance he wins it. I don't think there's any chance that Ukraine capitulates and that he gets what he wants, which is basically another province. It's simply not going to happen. And I just can't see a scenario it does. So it's a matter of how bad they bleed and how bad it hurts his dictatorship. But you're right. I think, but like somebody always says, I think how do authoritarians usually leave power?
Out a window.
Sometimes it's the end. Yeah, sometimes
out
it's
the window. There you go.
Sometimes it's a bunker. They don't.
Out the window.
Sometimes it's hanging from a bridge, right? So very rarely does an authoritarian like Mr. Putin leave policy.
There you go, Fred. I appreciate the time. Great stuff, man. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. Sorry.
Over 70 years of experience in heart and aviation, the members of the Association of Flight Attendants know the realities of the aircraft cabin better than anyone. We don't just serve drinks, we save lives. We don't just negotiate contracts, we move major policy issues like the smoking ban, no knives on planes, clean water, and safe food on board. The air we breathe matters, and we stop the spraying of poisonous pesticides. Training, rest, and no calls on planes matter as we fight fires, de-escalate conflict, revive, and breathe life. We safely usher passengers to the big business deal, the family vacation, the times of celebration, times of grief, and times of battle. We are aviation's first responders, and we are the last line of defense in aviation security. We are the first impression and the smile of aviation, connecting the people of our nations. Fly with us, partner with us, make progress with us. The Association of Flight Attendants. Stronger together, better together.
There's a yearning in America, a longing for restoration, an insatiable hunger to rebuild. With nearly 200 million Americans vaccinated and 7 million new jobs created, the message is clear. Americans are ready to work. Donald Trump's catastrophic presidency took its toll, but it did not take us out. With unemployment claims falling as fast as consumer confidence is rising, Americans are buying gifts for loved ones they couldn't even visit just 1 year ago. Today, millions of families are reunited. Yes, there is a yearning in America for our people to grow stronger, to stay healthier, for our nation to regain its prosperity. And though we haven't yet achieved everything we yearn for, it's good to have hope for a change.
The climate crisis is here.
These temperatures are almost unbelievable, even for a meteorologist.
And the solution is here too. Clean energy, like wind turbines and solar panels. Now, Congress has to invest in it, and in the millions of workers ready to install it across the country. Because in America, we don't hide from problems like climate change. We take them on. We innovate. We lead. Because if we invest in these workers and their future at this moment, that's how we build back better.
Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you get the podcast. Make sure you download the podcast, share it with your friends, especially your Trumpy friends. They need to hear things too. If you got any thoughts, questions, comments, by all means, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I answer all emails personally. And follow us on social media at Rick Smith Show on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of that stuff. Like, subscribe, share. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1972. That was the day auto workers at GM's Chevy Vega plant in Lordstown, Ohio, walked out on strike. The strike lasted for 18 days. The issues that fueled it were reminiscent of the sit-downs and wildcats that built the UAW in the 30s and 40s. Workers at Lordstown wanted greater control over the production process. The young, integrated workforce of the 1960s social protest era was fed fed up with long days, forced overtime, increased automation, and dangerous speed up on the assembly line. Long-standing grievances numbered in the thousands, and disciplinary firings were common. Absenteeism was rampant, morale was so low that cars left the assembly line incomplete or vandalized. By the time the strike ended, many felt it was called simply to allow workers to blow off steam. There was no real change in the production process, but jobs eliminated in the 1970 contract were restored, and some 1,400 disciplinary layoffs were dropped. The worker malaise suffered there came to be known as the Lordstown Syndrome. In his book, Staying Alive, the 1970s and the Last Days of the Working Class, Jefferson Cowie notes that the strike compelled the Senate to hold hearings on alienation at work. Its committee produced the report Work in America. This report confirmed many workers at all occupational levels feel locked in. Their mobility blocked, the opportunity to grow lacking in their jobs, challenge missing from their tasks. Cowie concludes that the strike and report initiated the quality of work-life movement that sought to redesign work, introduce automation differently, and invest in human relation strategies, most of which continued to empower management, not workers, albeit with a gentler hand.